Hello, learners. I welcome you to the third lecture of week 4 in the course Environmental Politics, Theories, Concepts, and Debates. In this week, we are discussing environmental movements in India. Today, we will discuss Appiko movement, which was a forest-based movement launched in 1980s in Karnataka. And two major issues involved in this movement were first, the issue of preventing clear felling of forest, and second, the issue of rights of local people over forest resources. So this was a movement which was inspired by Chipko movement, and therefore when you will go through this movement, you will find a lot of similarity in terms of issues, methods, and what is very important, why we have chosen this movement to discuss, because you see, this movement would help you to understand that how in India environmental movements shaped each other, they inspired each other and motivated each other. You see, the Chipko movement took place in the northern part of the country, and the Appiko movement took place in the southern part of the country. So there's a big gap, south and north. But despite that, they got connected with each other. They shaped each other. So it is very important to understand that all these connections developed in the phase which was not a phase of digital media or what we say social media platform. In present time, it is very easy for any movement or any campaign to take inspiration from some movement or campaign running in other part of the country, or you see, even the other part of the globe. But we are talking about 1980s. So this could happen only because people get connected with each other. So this way we can say that in India, people's movement in general or environmental movement in particular worked as a connecting thread between different parts of the country. So against this background, we'll try to understand Apiko movement in today's lecture. This is the outline of the lecture. So we are going to cover these aspects in today's lecture. Firstly, we'll talk about what was the context of Apiko movement, then the major issues which were involved in this movement, leadership and organizational framework, strategies in the movement, and also impact of the movement. So to begin with, a very important debate. You see, this debate is not only related to Apiko movement, but most of the forest-based movement launched in India. We have seen this thing earlier also, that before colonial age, the forests were managed by local communities through sustainable practices. And this relation of local community and forest, you see, was very different. It was a kind of relation of mutual dependence, harmony also. But after the coming of British rule in India, obviously they had to take profit and benefit from each and every aspect. So therefore, they took control over the large forest area and exploited the forest resources for its own purpose. Now, during the colonial age also, there were incidences of resistance against this colonial control over forest resources in different parts of India. But most of these protests that time were often seen as a part of anti-colonial protest. So that time its ecological character did not get highlighted. And another aspect is that the concerns of these early protests were largely material rather than ecological. Why? Because ecological concerns took center stage little later. We need to understand that these flawed policies introduced by colonial regime, it took some time to result in negative impact. and we started seeing its impact during 1960s and 70s. And that was the phase where this ecological concerns came at the center. And at the same time, this concern came at the center not only in India but in the whole global community. So scholars argue that after independence, the Indian state continued the colonial practice of claiming rights over forest resources. This point is explained by Swine, who says that resource use policies in independent India first elaborated in the National Forest Policy of 1952, continued along the old colonial patterns of the forest policy of 1894, thereby reinforced the state's right to exclusive control over forest protection, production, and management. So you see, it is so interesting that a policy which came in 1952 was inspired by the policy of 1894. So these three things, forest protection, production, and management, it was controlled by state. Now, this exclusive control of state on forest resources, coupled with the target of rapid industrial development, very soon led to uncontrolled exploitation of forest resources, depriving the local forest dwellers from means of their survival, that was a material loss, as well as the ecological imbalances. And the Appiko movement emerged as a response to the debates of rights over forest resources and management and ecological degradation. So, this can be called a major issue or a major aspect which was related to Appiko movement. And as I said, not only with Appiko movement, but most of the forest-based movement in India. Now we'll understand that what Appiko movement was and a quick overview of Appiko movement. So in 1983, the Appiko movement began in Karnataka's Uttar Kannada district, taking inspiration from the Northern Chipko movement. It was launched to protect the resources of Western Ghats in South India. The movement was founded and led by environmental activist Pandurang Hegde to conserve the trees of Kalse forest of Karnataka. The movement basically worked toward bringing people together for the cause of forest conservation and to keep the forest ecosystem safe from commercial activities. Through peaceful measures focusing on hugging trees, villagers aimed at encouraging policy changes which reduced the depletion of forests and implemented sustainable resource management. So, this is a brief introduction of the movement. But you see, we have discussed this point earlier also that any movement starts with a triggering issue or event. Its background may be created long back, but it needs one triggering issue. So we need to understand what was that triggering issue. The commercial forest policy of the government and modernized development led to livelihood crisis for local people in Uttar Kannada. For many years, it was observed that the forest department, with the goal of revenue generation, because for forest department, you see, forests were what? Resource. So they wanted maximum benefit out of that. So, with this objective, they had been replacing mixed semi evergreen forest with teak monoculture plantation through clear cutting. So, the basic objective of this monoculture plantation was to increase revenue. In ecology, there is a long debate on the impact of monoculture plantation and polyculture plantation. So, monoculture plantation increases production, but at the same time, it leads to loss of biodiversity and soil degradation. So, in this context, what we are seeing to increase revenue generation, this mixed semi evergreen forests were replaced with teak monoculture plantation. And this very soon led to a decrease in the green cover of Karnataka. And here we can see that Hegde writes that in 1950, Uttar Kannada district forest covered more than 81% of its geographical area. The forest had shrunk to nearly 25% of the district's area by 1980. So you can see that it's a huge decrease in the green cover of Uttar Kannada district. As a response to that, the residents of Salkani village in Sirsi Taluk, Uttar Kannada, appealed to the Kalse forest authorities to stop tree felling activities in the Biligal forest under the Hulekal range. But you see, the forest department and contractors did not pay attention to their request, and they continued with their practice of clearing the natural forest, and this led to soil erosion, water depletion, and loss of biodiversity. And you see, on the one hand, it was impacting ecology, on the other hand, it was also impacting day to day lives of local people, especially those whose livelihood was dependent on forest resources. So, obviously, now in 1983, the local people, women, and youth of the region, they decided to launch a movement similar to Chipko. They invited Sundarlal Bahuguna, who was a great figure of Chipko movement, and gathered people to take up an oath to protect trees by embracing them. And here, what started was Appiko movement. This Appiko means hug in Kannada, symbolizing protection for the tree. So this is how the movement started. Now, Apiko was seen as a snowball effect. Why? Because it started from one village, but very soon started spreading in different parts of the region. Forced the loggers and the contractors of the state forest department to stop cutting trees. The agitation continued for 38 days, forcing the state government to finally concede to their demands and withdraw the order for the felling of trees. The movement became South India's first large scale environmental movement, and it basically addressed three issues together. First was ecological destruction, second was community rights, and third was debate on development. What kind of development we need? And in fact, we can say this was a movement along with Chipko movement and other environmental movement in 70s and 80s that developed this debate of sustainable development. Now we'll see what were the major issues which were involved in this movement. So first was deforestation and reduction of forest area. So logging and other commercial activities which caused primary deforestation in the Western Ghats was a particular cause for concern. This Western Ghat was known for its ecological richness, at the same time was ecologically sensitive. This deforestation impacted ecosystem balance as well as subsistence of local people. Obviously, deforestation and reduction of forest area very soon led to uncontrolled depletion of natural resources. The movement basically sought to restrain the uncontrolled depletion of forest resources for economic purposes, while at the same time it wanted to develop some kind of balance between human welfare and ecology. They were very sure that we can develop a model of development or a sustainable lifestyle where we can have a balance between human welfare and ecology. And third very important issue was absence of control over forest resources. So the policies adopted by the government coupled with the actions of logging firms deprived the villagers from access to food items, fuel, medicinal plant, and other basic requirements. And this gave rise to their grievances. Now we'll talk about the major leaders and organizations related to the movement. So the principal figure in the Apiko movement was Pandurang Hegde. He was an environmentalist who played a very crucial role in organizing local communities in Karnataka for saving the forest of the Western Ghats. He was very much motivated by and trained by Sundarlal Bahuguna. Sundarlal Bahuguna wrote about him that the Himalayan bird flew over to the Western Ghats. Hegde was successful in getting people to adopt trees as a form of protest against deforestation. You see, this very method is very interesting, where people were asked to adopt tree and then to take care of trees in the same way as they would have taken care of their family members. So this very idea speaks of a different kind of relationship between people and forest. We can say this idea can be explained as ecological self concept in practice. The primary organizations which supported the movement were Karnataka State Farmers Sangh, that is the Farmers Association, supported the movement by organizing the protest along with educating the rural population. And second was Karnataka State Forest Workers Union. This union was very active in raising the need of sustaining forest and the forest resources among the people. So these were the major organizations which supported the movement and played very significant role in expanding its mass base and support base. Now the strategies. Most of the strategies which were used by Appiko movement were same, which we have already discussed in Chipko movement. So first one was tree hugging. The first tree hugging event was in the village of Salkani, where over 300 villages from Uttar Kannada region participated. Second, public awareness campaigns. The movement organized number of rallies and primary meetings to make people aware of the importance of the forest and its ecological values. The villagers were taught about the effects of deforestation such as soil erosion and water depletion in the region. For creating awareness, the activists circulated leaflets, convened lectures, and also utilized regional press. The role of regional press was very, very important in this movement. Why? Because through it, the message of the movement could reach every household. Then, mobilization of the community. The people from the local countryside, especially women and farmers, they actively participated. Women led the marches and other organizational work at the local level. And in fact, Apiko leadership knew it that these are the actual representative of rural population, farmers, women. Why? Because they were directly dependent on forest. Then the method of peaceful direct action and non-violent protest and collaboration with local organizations. These were some of the very important strategies adopted by the movement. Now we'll try to understand that what kind of impact was created by the movement. You see, movement started with three major objectives. First was protection of the existing forest cover. How? By preventing cutting of trees. Second, regeneration of trees in denuded lands through afforestation. And third, prudential use of natural resources, that is, utilizing forest wealth with proper consideration to conservation of natural resources. The movement gave a very important slogan that was Ubsu, Belisu, and Balasu. That is, save forest, grow trees, and make a rational use of natural resources. So this movement had a very rational message also to give to people that this planet works on the principle of limits to growth, and we have to align our way of life with this basic feature of the planet. And this slogan given by the movement actually resulted in immense impact. And one of the impact can be seen that Hegde reports that as per records, 1.2 million saplings were grown by people in the Sirsi area in 1984, 1985, and you see it was a people's initiative. So this particular effort obviously led to increase in the green cover of the region. Further, the movement also made villagers aware about the environmental threat posed by the commercial and industrial groups to forest, which were the major source of livelihood for them. Now, it led to a very interesting incidents that there are a number of stories where the local laborers, they started non-cooperation with the loggers and contractors and even forest department. They said, no, we are not going to cut trees even on handsome wages. So they could understand that these trees are our livelihood and we have to protect it. Thus, the movement helped in preserving essential resources for the local communities such as medicinal trees, honey, bamboo. And Appiko movement, you see, it was not only a resistance against tree cutting, it had a big constructive agenda. And for that, it tried to change people's attitude so that they could realize that if they are going to overuse natural resources, their survival would be under crisis. And through constructive program, the movement developed sustainable practices to reduce pressure on the forest. One very important example of these sustainable practices was that increasing number of people started building biogas plants. Further, to promote the alternative sources of energy, activists constructed 2,000 fuel efficient chulhas. The objective was to reduce the use of fossil fuels. And through these initiatives, it was observed that there was a decrease in fuel wood consumption by almost 40%. So this can be called the constructive program of the movement. Now, in terms of policy changes, the major achievement of the movement was that the state government banned felling of green trees in some forest areas. Only felling of dead, dying, and dry trees were allowed to meet local requirements. No further issuing of concessions to logging companies, and a moratorium on felling of green trees in the tropical rainforest of the Western Ghats. So these can be called the major achievements of Appiko movement. Now, the issue which was raised by Appiko movement. So we may say that Appiko movement raised an early alarm. In 2013, the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel designated the entire Western Ghats as an ecologically sensitive area. Parts of the Western Ghats were declared a heritage site by UNESCO and have been recognized as one of the world's 10 biodiversity hotspots. So this was the story of Appiko movement. These are the references I have used in my lecture. You can go through it. I have given here a YouTube video link. This is a video on role of communities in protecting forest. This video is not on Appiko movement, but if you will go through this video, you can understand that what kind of role communities can play in protecting forest. Now, these are the activity questions. I expect you to complete these questions after going through the lecture. So thank you, learners. Today we discussed Appiko movement and we discussed various aspects of Appiko movement, its origin, its context, issues, methods and strategies, and also impact created by the movement. So thank you so much. Now we'll meet in the next lecture.